He drank radioactive water for 3 years. This is what happened. What if a miracle cure, praised by doctors and sought after by the wealthy, was actually a slow and gruesome death sentence in a bottle? What if the key ingredient, a newly discovered element that glowed with an almost magical light, was silently replacing your bones and turning your own skeleton against you? For one man, this waking nightmare became a horrific reality. He was rich, famous, and at the top of his game. He thought he had found the fountain of youth. Instead, he found a substance that would dismantle him from the inside out. He drank radioactive water for years, and this is the unbelievable gruesome, an entirely true story of what happened to his body. Section 1. The man at the top of the world before the horror, before the doctors. Before the poison masquerading as medicine, there was just Eben Byers. Born in 1880, he was the picture of American success. His father was a wealthy industrialist, a titan of the Pittsburgh steel industry, and Eben was poised to inherit it all. He was educated at the finest schools, including Yale, and he wasn't just a rich kid coasting on his family's name. Byers had a reputation for being a formidable sportsman. He was a passionate and skilled golfer, so much so that he clinched the U.S. Amateur Golf Championship in 1906, a prestigious title that cemented his status as a national athletic figure. Byers was the man who had everything. He was handsome, charismatic, and known as a man about town. As he took the reins of his father's company, becoming chairman of the Girard Iron Company, his wealth and influence only grew. He had homes in Pittsburgh, the Hamptons, and South Carolina. He was a regular in high society circles, a successful industrialist, and a celebrated athlete. He was strong, healthy, and the very definition of vitality. In the 1920s, Eben Byers was standing at the pinnacle of life, a man seemingly untouched by hardship. But nobody, and especially not Byers himself, could have possibly imagined the dark and macabre turn his life was about to take. It would begin not with a bang, but with a simple, unfortunate accident, a moment of bad luck that would set him on a path toward one of the most horrifying deaths in medical history. Section 2. The Fateful Fall and a Miracle in a Bottle. The beginning of the end for Eben Byers came in November 1927. While traveling home on a chartered train after the annual Harvard-Yale football game, Byers fell out of his sleeper car's upper berth and injured his arm. The injury was persistent, causing him chronic pain that even a man of his robust constitution couldn't simply shake off. Seeking relief, Byers consulted a Pittsburgh physician named Dr. Charles Clinton Moyer. Dr. Moyer, like many practitioners of his era, was caught up in the buzz around a new, seemingly miraculous scientific discovery: radioactivity. In the early 20th century, radium wasn't viewed with the fear and caution it is today. Instead, it was hailed as a wonder element. Its ghostly glow was seen as a sign of life-giving energy. A massive industry of radioactive quackery had emerged, promoting radium-infused products as a cure for nearly every ailment imaginable. There were radium-laced chocolates, toothpastes, cosmetics, and even radium suppositories that promised to restore male vigor. It was within this climate of misguided optimism that Dr. Moyer made his fateful prescription. He recommended a patent medicine called Radithor. For Eben Byers, a man desperate for relief, Radithor seemed like the perfect cutting-edge solution. It was expensive, it was prescribed by a doctor, and it was based on the miracle of modern science. Trusting his physician, he began taking the radioactive water, unaware that each small bottle he eagerly consumed was a dose of slow-acting poison. Section 3. The Golden Glow of Deception. Almost immediately, Byers was convinced that Radithor was working wonders. He reported feeling a toned-up feeling, a surge of energy and vitality that not only seemed to ease the pain in his arm, but also made him feel rejuvenated. He was so thoroughly impressed that he became Radithor's most fervent and high-profile evangelist. He didn't just take it. He swore by it. Over the next 3 years, Byers consumed an enormous quantity of the stuff, at his peak, drinking up to 3 bottles a day. He sent cases of Radithor to his friends and business associates, urging them to experience the same incredible effects. He even gave it to one of his racehorses. By the time he stopped, it's estimated that Eben Byers had consumed somewhere around 1,400 bottles of the radioactive elixir. He believed he was drinking liquid sunshine. The tragic irony is that the exact opposite was happening. With every sip, Byers was introducing a deadly Trojan horse into his system. The science behind his horrific decline lies in basic chemistry. Radium is chemically similar to calcium, a fundamental building block of bone. When ingested, the body's biological pathways can't easily distinguish between the two elements. So, as Byers drank his miracle cure, the radioactive radium was absorbed and, just like calcium, was deposited directly into his skeleton. Once embedded there, the radium began its silent, sinister work. Radithor contained 2 radium isotopes, radium-226, which has a half-life of 1,600 years, and radium-228, with a much shorter half-life, about 5.75 years. As these unstable atoms decayed, they released alpha particles. Alpha particles can be stopped by a simple sheet of paper, but when the source is inside your body, they become microscopic cannonballs, bombarding and shredding the surrounding cells. Eben Byers' own skeleton was becoming the source of his destruction, an internal radioactive lattice relentlessly irradiating him from the inside out. The toned-up feeling he experienced was a complete illusion, a placebo effect masking a gruesome internal disintegration that was just beginning to gather pace. The story is about to take a dark and gruesome turn. So far, we've seen how a celebrated man was duped by false science, but the true horror of what the radium was doing to his body was yet to reveal itself. If you're finding this unbelievable piece of history fascinating, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us bring more of these incredible true stories to light. Now, back to the nightmare unfolding within Eben Byers' body. Section 4. The body betrayed by 1930. The illusion shattered. The invigorating effects of Radithor vanished, and in their place, a cascade of horrifying symptoms began. It started with severe headaches and a drastic, unexplained weight loss. Byers, once a powerful athlete, grew thin and frail. Then, his teeth began to fall out. This was the first visible sign of the radium jaw that had afflicted the dial painter girls years earlier. The massive concentration of radium in his jawbone was unleashing a constant barrage of alpha radiation. This radiation was literally blowing his bone cells apart, a process known as necrosis. The bone tissue, starved of blood and systematically destroyed, began to die and rot away. The pain was excruciating. In a desperate attempt to halt the decay, doctors were forced to surgically remove the dead tissue. Eventually, surgeons had to remove his entire upper jaw, with the exception of 2 front teeth and most of his lower jaw. The man who once graced sports magazines was now disfigured beyond recognition. In 1931, an attorney for the Federal Trade Commission, Robert Wynne, was sent to interview Byers for a case against Radithor's creator. Wynne's report paints a truly ghastly picture. He described arriving at Byers' luxurious home to find a man who was a shadow of his former self. Wynne wrote, "A more gruesome experience in a more gorgeous setting would be hard to imagine." He noted that Byers' head was wrapped in bandages, he could barely speak, and that all the remaining bone tissue of his body was slowly disintegrating, and holes were actually forming in his skull. The radium wasn't just destroying his bones. It was creating abscesses in his brain and causing his kidneys to fail. The alpha radiation, relentlessly emitted from within his own skeleton, was causing widespread cellular damage and leading to multiple cancers. Eben Byers was, in the most literal sense, being eaten alive from the inside out by the very cure he had so enthusiastically consumed. Section 5. the gruesome end and a warning from the grave. Eben Byers' long and agonizing ordeal finally ended on March 31st, 1932. He died at the age of 51. The official cause of death was attributed to radiation poisoning, specifically multiple cancers caused by the radium that had saturated his body. An autopsy revealed the horrifying extent of the damage. His brain was riddled with abscesses, his jaws were almost completely gone, and his bones were filled with a staggering amount of radium. It was calculated that his body contained about 36 micrograms of radium. To put that in perspective, a fatal dose is considered to be as little as 2 to 10 micrograms. Byers had many times that amount cemented into his skeleton. The poison he had willingly consumed had one final chilling statement to make. The radium within his remains was so intensely radioactive that his body posed a threat even in death. To prevent radiation from leaking into the environment, Eben Byers had to be buried in a specially constructed lead-lined coffin. When his body was exhumed for study in 1965, his remains were still dangerously radioactive. They measured at over 225,000 becquerels of radiation, more than 50 times the amount found in a typical human body. Thanks to radium-226's 1,600-year half-life, his grave remains a shielded, permanent tomb for the radioactive man he had become. Conclusion: The Legacy of Radithor. The gruesome and highly publicized death of a man as famous as Eben Byers was a national sensation. The story, epitomized by a Wall Street Journal headline that starkly read, "The radium water worked fine until his jaw came off," became a scandal. Byers' horrific fate, coupled with the well-documented suffering of the radium girls, shattered the public's naive fascination with radium. The glowing element was no longer seen as a magical elixir, but as the deadly poison it truly was. His death spurred action. The Federal Trade Commission moved against William J. A. Bailey, the quack who created Radithor, ordering him to stop his false claims. Though Bailey himself was never criminally charged for Byers' death and died of bladder cancer years later, his radium empire crumbled. More importantly, the scandal gave new power and authority to the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, leading to stricter regulations and effectively ending the era of radioactive quackery. The story of Eben Byers is a tragic cautionary tale. It's a story of a man at the pinnacle of success who, through a combination of bad luck and misplaced faith in pseudoscience, suffered one of the most horrific deaths imaginable. He sought a shortcut to health in a bottle, only to find it contained an agonizing and unstoppable death. His terrifying ordeal serves as a permanent, grim reminder of the profound dangers of miracle cures and the absolute necessity of rigorous, evidence-based science in medicine.